All right, you guys, I cannot believe it. Final class, painting dynamic skies that glow. So we have decided to start with a demo. And what I'm going to be doing is taking this black and white acrylic painting and adding some warmth and glow. You can see it's kind of a minimalist sky. So I'm going to be hinting at transitions, and I'm going to be starting with the warms. The big thing for me in this painting is the direction of a soft light,
Okay.
right? So you can kind of see where I've bleached out the trees a little bit or kind of obliterated those. That is where I want my sun. So it's going to be kind of almost above those waves on the left side that are crashing. So it's going to be kind of a left heavy painting as far as the dynamicism and where the lighting effects are coming. And in my initial painting, I wasn't really happy because it literally felt like it leaned very heavy left. Everything was left. So I brought in the rocks down in the foreground, and I'm going to backlight those waves. And I want to create a very warm, kind of early morning atmospheric effect. I will end up glazing in some cool colors, and we'll see if we can do it today. But it may be safer that I kind of get in the warms and then glaze in the cool, the blues, the greens, and other colors a little bit later after the glaze has dried. On our Padlet page, I have included under resources a new product that I'm experimenting with, which is called CAS Alkyd Pro.
Yeah.
It's a fairly inexpensive product. I don't know much about this company besides that they make fast drying oils. And I have been experimenting with this medium a little bit. What I do like is that it doesn't dry as shiny as some of the other glazing mediums that I've used. So, you can hold off on buying it but I've found that it's very easy to work with. So I will go ahead and change the camera angle to show you a little bit of what I'm talking about here. So hopefully I don't make you guys seasick.
Michael, is the Galkid Pro, is that also what Gamblin is calling the 123 Galkid? I just saw an ad yesterday.
Yeah, I just saw that too. It would not be quite the same. It would be closer to their Galkid gel it'd probably be closest to their Galkid gel.
Okay, all right.
But it dries, here it is. It dries really fast,
Okay.
like within a couple hours. I'm not sure I would like start glazing into it, but I bet you by this evening I could go in and do other glazes with it. So what
Okay.
I'm going to do is I'm going to take the Galkid Pro. I'm going to mix some Gamsol, which is a paint thinner, because this kind of comes out like a honey consistency. Here, we'll put a little pile over here. So it's a bit sticky. Can you guys see that little pile there?
Yeah. Mhm.
And it doesn't smell awful. Sometimes mediums smell really badly. That's one of the reasons I do like the Gamblin products, is they don't have this overbearing kind of noxious smell. So what I've done is, here's my kind of reference I put together, kind of collage together and use some Photoshop to kind of tie in some edges. And what I've chose are a number of just transparent colors. The truth is, the primary color I'm going to use, because I kind of want a warm golden glow. If you guys remember this painting that I did as a demo in class a while back, I really like this feel.
Yeah.
I was talking, at the beginning of class about, I just love golds and grays near each other with just hints of warmth. And so I kind of like to push that, but at the same time, in kind of the back sides of some of these waves, I was thinking I could maybe push some of the blues and greens and really bring out that warmth a little more. So one of my favorite colors for doing that kind of overarching kind of warm color is just simply called Transparent Earth Yellow by Gamblin. One of my other favorite colors, hard to find, and I think for a little while it was extinct, but is a quinacridone gold. This one happens to be by Daniel Smith. It's a color that went away and I think maybe is making a little bit of a comeback, but quinacridone gold is a brilliant color. So for students that have been with me for a while, you guys will remember some of these charts that we made. So I went ahead and made a chart with all of my semi-transparent earthy colors. This side is just the colors and then thinned down by just scrubbing them out. So almost like working on the glaze, like not adding white anyways. So you can see behind them that there's a permanent marker line.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a great way for me to test the transparency of my different colors. This is so fast to make, and I suggest you guys all do this. Take and make just a bunch of lines with your permanent marker. I wrote the names at the end. And just test them by just rubbing them out, making them thinner and thinner. Don't add white to make them lighter, but actually just, you know, a paper towel back in to make them transparent is a great way to test all these different colors. So I had done this one with kind of my split primary plus a couple other colors that I was curious about. And then did it with all these, you know, after you've been painting for a while, you gather up 50, 100 tubes of paint, and it's just fun to kind of know a little more about them. So again, this side is just thinned out. I didn't write the names on there, so I printed them out on the back. And then on this side, I added white to them to make them lighter. So I could see how the colors really change. Like this color, what is that? The fifth one down there, brown pink. How much, you know, how saturated it stays even when I thin it out with a paper towel or a bit of Gamsol versus how cool it gets when I add white to it, right? So this is a great tool. So when I'm looking at my reference or at my painting and I'm kind of mapping out what's, you know, where's the light, where's the temperature shifts, how do I want that light to be affecting the scene? And what's the feeling I want, right? What's that poetry that I'm hoping to get from it? Because I could paint it hyper realistic. I could bring in tons of colors, but I, again, lean a little more tonalist. So then I can just kind of look through and like, okay, a little bit of this Indian yellow and the super saturated, maybe a bit of Hansa. Which red may be nice for the glowing kind of light around the trees and the rocks. I could go to the Naphthol Scarlet because it's a beautiful, warm, transparent, or I could go to the quinacridone red. It's a little bit cooler. I think the quinacridone violet would be too cool. But what about in the shadows of these waves? Do I want this kind of rich blue, or maybe this manganese blue hue might be a real nice counterbalance to some of that warmth. So by having that available to me, I can then start to look through my tubes of paint and decide. And that actually reminded me, because I actually grabbed a tube of turquoise, phthalo turquoise, which is really, really rich, but maybe because I don't want this huge jump in the temperature shifts, maybe I should actually have grabbed a tube of my manganese blue hue. And so it's still got a little bit of a greenish hint compared to the ultramarine blue, which leans a little purple. So then what I've done is I've squeezed out a little bit of these different transparent colors. Again, this is the color I'll probably be using the most, the transparent earth yellow. And maybe for some of the darks, I'll be using this transparent oxide, which would be a transparent earth red if it was a Gamblin color. And you can see I've got like 4 different brands, 5 different brands out here. But what the main thing I was looking for in this, at least the beginning of this painting, is the fact that they say transparent on the back. Transparent, semi-transparent. Any questions on that, you guys?
That earth yellow is kind of like a transparent yellow ochre, isn't it?
It is, yeah. I mean, on the, here, I'll go back down here real quick. On the pile, it actually looks so brownish.
Oh,
Okay.
But because it's so transparent, I actually have a transparent or a gold ochre, which is a strange color, beautiful, but it's looks like a normal yellow ochre when I
Okay.
take it out of the tube, but it's actually a transparent yellow ochre, which is a lot of fun. So let's look at our painting here. And I've had to change the angle of the camera a little bit because it's such a big surface. This is 30 inches tall by 40 inches wide.
Wow.
So it's a big guy.
Yeah.
Again, I want my sun here, kind of behind these trees. You see that there's a hill kind of coming back. So the sun's kind of right above the hill, like it's just beginning to break through. The light is coming down across. It's also behind this hill. So anything that's on the other side of the hill, it's affecting in a different way. I've also got to think about the sky where my warmer, lighter colors, possibly going to cooler colors. And I can play that out in the reflections of the water, right? But I also have that light coming and catching the mist of these waves. Also, that light is coming through. It's going to be catching, there's mist back here on these rocks, and it's going to be catching the sides of these rocks a little more. These rocks are all in shadow, right? The light's coming from behind towards here. You've got to be thinking in 3 dimensions as you're painting your scene of how is the light moving through the picture. Scary, right? It's a lot, but it's an interesting way to think. So I'm just taking some Gamsol, adding it to my brush. I'm going to add that to that medium because, again, it's very sticky. It's kind of got a honey consistency. I double checked before class started that it's okay to mix paint thinner or Gamsol with it. It is. So I'm just kind of mixing that with my brush. It'd have been better if I did it with a palette knife, as always, but I'm gonna move some of these paints down. Sorry, you guys can't see. I could change the view, but then the picture will get much smaller and I'm afraid we'll cut it off. So I will try my best and remind me if I'm stopped doing it to describe the colors I'm using. So I'm gonna mix some of that transparent earth yellow with some of this medium. And I'm going to basically glaze a lot because this is going to be my kind of harmonizing undercolor. And then what I'm going to do is come back in and add a little bit more color variation and temperature variation. Scariest part of the painting. Very happy with this underpainting. Now I'm risking messing it all up. But I have faith because I've messed up enough little paintings. I mean, had enough little paintings that worked out by experimenting with this. So what I'm doing is just very quickly getting a bunch of paint on there. And then I'm actually going to either take a big brush or a paper towel. I'm going to be careful. I'm going to scrape this painting. These barrel.
So the underpainting is acrylic, right?
Yes, and I let it dry for 2 days.
Okay.
Let me just grab, guess I'm just gonna use that whole pile of paint. Who would be terrified right now if this was your paint?
Me.
I'm just trying to get this moved around, and then what I'm gonna do is grab some of my paper towels. Again, I like the blue paper towels when I'm doing this, just because they're a little stronger. I do have my cheap, Costco house, kitchen towels. But what they do is they fall apart really quickly and leave a lot of lint. These are more towel-like, like and they just hold up so much better. They are a little more expensive, but they really do hold up. I think one of the students even mentioned that they've washed these towels, which seems crazy, but isn't that nice? Like how it just blends in there. So I've just changed, you guys are talking about the black and white underpaintings are so cold. I agree. And I actually like warmth and temperature, and a lot of times instead of doing a black and white acrylic underpainting, I will do a burnt umber and white acrylic painting, which really helps. I also still just love doing my wipeaways with oils and everything else. Oops, I accidentally touched into some transparent earth red there. Not a problem. Evidently touched a lot of it. This medium that I'm using, that CAS Alkyd Pro fast drying medium, does dry really fast. It may be one of the fastest drying mediums that I've ever played with, which is a good thing and a bad thing. If I stop moving, it's a bad thing. If I keep working this out, totally different image, right? Especially with these reds and browns down here. See if we can get rid of some of those. This is a tough thing because I was pretty happy with that black and white underpainting. Like I could have probably almost stopped it there, but I do want to bring in this idea of temperature shifts. And I too don't really love, personal choice here, don't personally love really cool cold paintings. So I'm just making sure I kind of got it rubbed out, that it's fairly even. All right. So do you guys remember the first thing I said about where the light is and how I want the light and temperature to move through it, right? I kind of want this to be my warmest area. You can have warm fog here. You can have warmer edges to the tops of some of these waves. And I want cooler, and cooler in the shadows. So now all I'm going to do is take, and just with that in mind, I'm just going to bring back a little more of that grayish color, which will get a little cooler and will allow me to go back and revisit these areas with a cooler glaze when I'm ready to do it, which again, could be later today. It could be, we'll see if we can get to it during this demo. So I'm still thinking about how that light's traveling. So I'm just thinking right now, I am painting where that light is not traveling, where it's a little more blocked off, where it's in shadows or where it's not a key element. And let's see if that starts to read like that. See, so I'm coming into these waves where they're going to be, they're not catching as much light. The water's not as transparent. So I am taking away some of that warmth. I could leave it, but then that yellow plus some of the blues, purples, pinks, whatever colors I want to put into the shadows are going to be affected by that undercolor and may turn up a little more brown because I'm mixing multiple primaries.
Michael, you're still using a dry towel there, correct?
Yeah, it's just a dry towel.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Picking up. I've got a little while. I've got probably 5, 10, 15 minutes to kind of move it. I can already feel it sucking into those acrylics. And this looks really weird, right? Because it's lighter than here, but I know I'm going to come back in and glaze this with cooler colors. Also, you can think now, begin to think inversely that I've got kind of a mid temperature out there, right? It's kind of a earthy-ish, yellowish color. In this area where the sun is, I'm probably going to want it warmer. On the edges of these waves, I'm probably going to want it a little warmer. So I can just wipe away a little bit so that I'm creating a cleaner area for some of these warmer colors I want to bring in. And I'm going to do that here in just a second. So you'll be able to see that, I hope. And notice I say I hope at the end of a lot of things I do when I'm teaching.
Is that a wave in that back rock formation, or is that a hole?
I'm thinking it's going to be a hole that the light's coming through. It might be a little bit much. May as well throw a bald eagle and a rainbow in there, but I kind of like the idea of the light coming through that hole. And you can kind of see where I've hopefully hinted at mist, but yeah, no, good question. But I do retain the right to change my mind if it doesn't work. We'll just make it a wave. So again, I'm thinking, where's this warmer light coming through? So let's go ahead and grab a warmer yellow and do something very similar here. So taking a little more of the medium, putting it on my glass palette here. So I've got warmer colors that I have here. I've got my gold ochre. I've got Indian yellow, and then also transparent yellow medium. So I'm trying to decide how warm, how yellow, how orangish, how goldish do I want it. But I do know that I love it when I have that kind of reddish rim light around areas. So kind of thinking I might try, let's just see what happens with more of the almost pure yellow. So again, this is a transparent yellow medium. I could have used a lot of different colors. This just happens to be one that literally says transparent on it. So let's see what happens. Again, this is where my sun is, kind of rising right about here. So let's see what this yellow looks like. Isn't that interesting how all these other yellows just get a little bit colder when I put a legitimate warm yellow? It feels like a lot to me. That feels kind of extreme. So I'm kind of sitting back for a second, thinking about it, trying to decide if I like that. And I'm trying to imagine, okay, if I bring in some reds, they'll turn to oranges, bring in some bottoms of these, you know, kind of soft, hazy clouds. I also want to bring some reds into here. So I'm just kind of looking, thinking, does this work? Is that too severe? It's very yellow. So I'm just going to slightly soften that. That feels better already, right?
Mhm.
Let's imagine where I want my sun. It's not a bad time to kind of place it in a little bit. So if I want my light coming through this cave, it's probably going to be about here. I'm going to take a little bit of that bright yellow and bring it down into the mist down in here. Kind of a ugly, I mean, I'm just not a huge fan of bright yellow personally. Kind kind of an ugly, odd color, but I feel like as I bring in other colors, it should start to subdue a little bit. Oh, I just wiped it all away. I meant to just softly wipe it away, so I'm just gonna add it back. And just wipe down a little softer, not pushing so hard. I'm almost wondering if I need to bring in some of my reds or warmer orangey or yellows to begin to kind of see how they're working. So I've also got a Rembrandt transparent red medium. Not a color this is the first tube I've ever owned. So a little experimental. It might be kind of really hot. Let's see. Because I want to have kind of a glowy red light warmth. Oh, that's already helping, right? Kind of knocking back, making that yellow less garish and a little more purposeful. Does that kind of help the warmth to kind of have a bit of
Yes,
a meaning?
Yeah.
Don't know what a good term is.
Quite a bit.
Let's see what happens if I warm up this rock.
it does.
How close is that particular color to transparent red?
The earth red,
Yeah, transparent red oxide.
it's a lot redder.
It's redder. Okay.
Yeah, I have some transparent earth iron oxide here. We can just put it next to it here,
Oh,
Darker.
which
Okay.
could totally work as a transition, right? I could have that as it transitions into these rocks. So I'm gonna clean my brush and go back and get that oxide off there just for a second. We can come back to that. Because that could actually be the color that would actually be more harmonious.
I was just curious because from here it looks like transparent red oxide.
Yeah, and I think it's because it's picking up a lot of that yellow, so it's going to orange, all those yellows colors that I already have on there. So I'm just gonna softly wipe these colors that are further away from my light source. I want the real reddish reds and yellowy yellows right kind of close to my light source. Nice. All right, this is the scary part for me. I'm gonna bring some of this red back here and warm up this hill. Even though I want it to fall back, I'm hoping that even though it's all misty, so that mist is catching a lot of this transparent light. Oh boy, that's scary. What have I done? I just picture, or almost instantly just heard like all my coaches throughout my history going, Orwick, what have you done? Right, and I'm just using a paper towel to wipe this in. I could be using, a smaller, more organized brush. But at this point, I'm just testing. I'm just trying out temperature shifts and seeing what happens if I go, is it yellowish? Is it orangish? Is it goldish? Is it reddish? I want. All right, let's get scary again here a little bit. Let's bring some of this warmth, a little bit of this red into the edges of these waves, because I'm very curious. Being lighter is nice, right? But I feel like that mist maybe is catching a little bit of that warmth as well. Warwick, what have you done?
This may be a
And then
stupid
that-
question, but does the acrylic underpainting suck in color more than an oil underpainting?
Yes. It does. And the one part I really don't like about acrylic underpaintings is that they're not equal. Because I was using a gesso as my gray.
Uh-huh.
Gesso is much thirstier.
I was gonna say that really sucks it up.
Yeah.
So did you have trouble controlling the glaze, whatever color or glazing you were doing over the top of an underpainting then?
No, why do you ask? Just
Well, if
kidding.
it sucks up more
No,
color.
I absolutely am. So what I did was after I finished this black and white painting, I actually went over the whole thing with medium. I could have
Okay, I
used
wondered that.
a gloss, and that equalizes the amount of thirstiness that the surface is. But I'm still noticing that definitely certain areas are much thirstier, like the paint just soaking in, whether it's into the crevices of the paint, or whether that's just the gesso that's underneath it. I probably could have put 2 coats of that medium over the top of it. And if I would have done a gloss medium versus matte medium or an airbrush medium, it probably would be even less thirsty.
So is that a canvas or a board?
This is a board. Yeah, I almost always paint on boards,
Okay.
at least to a certain size, just because, yeah, you can tell how rough I'm being on it. All right, so we're starting to feel, I hope, that the warmth, you can start to see how the sunrise or sunset, in this case, it would probably be sunrise in the West Coast, how it is beginning to illuminate the edges. Like I'm literally thinking in 3-dimension, okay, this wave has a backside, a top side, and then this, I guess, okay, let's call this the front side to us, the top, and then the back, right? Facing towards the light. So that means it's backlit, so more warmth on the tops, on the crests, right? So I can also think about that in the water, that the light is coming across and hitting all these littler waves. So it's sitting on the tops of them, but in the shadow, darker sides, it is going to be a little cooler. Man, look at me. I've forgotten about this whole distant hill. So let's warm that up. Gonna make it a little earthier, a little grayed down, but at the same time, I still want to get that warmth back there. So I'm just kind of mixing up a couple of my colors that I've been using here. That may be too warm. Let's add a little bit of red to it. And again, this transparent red medium is quite warm. So I do have quinacridone on my palette, which I know is a great red for going towards purples. So maybe as I go onto this side away from my sunlight, that cooler red may be very useful. So I'm thinking about how's the light traveling? I'm thinking about the temperature of it. I want more light coming through, so I'm going to add a little more warmth down into that mist. It is an interesting thing to not put in these cools yet, right? It's makes it a little challenging to read how these warms are actually really going to feel without their counter temperature. opposite the shadow colors. But I have to kind of just keep leaning in, having a little bit of faith. I'm going to bring some quinacridone down, which is going to be a slightly cooler red. And I'm just going to start to see what happens with some transition areas, like into this sky. Because I know that my sky is going to be getting cooler to warmer as it comes here. So I've kind of got this transition band, you know, where the light's really raking across. So I'm just gonna, oh, so scary again.
That's quinacridone red.
That's mostly quinacridone. I did not clean my brush, so it's kind of mixed with all these other warm colors, kind of on purpose. Reserving a little bit for a cooler area. I'm gonna grab a clean paper towel. And the great thing about all of this, let's just say that it doesn't quite work out. Then I just go, you know what? I've got an underpainting. I can come back and paint opaquely, you know, with thicker, more direct approach with my oil paints, which I still hope I'll do because I want some, you know, I don't want just super transparent paint only. I'm going to go ahead and throw a little bit of cool color right on top in this corner because I just want to test it. So I'm thinking a little touch of ultramarine. I might even mix a touch of phthalo green into it, ultramarine and phthalo. You know, I'm already scared of everything else I'm doing. May as well get crazy.
Mhm.
This is a safer area for me to experiment with because I don't have as much going on. So I can kind of go, you know what, does that work? That's kind of nice. I'll probably have to come back in and, you know, kind of warm underneath, add a little more light here. The other thing is that I went from blue to my quinacridone, right? So my transition's a little safer versus going from my blue to a yellow or an orange. So that allows me to go, okay, well, what if I bring some of these temperatures, let's say, like into the back of this hill, into the back of this hill, into these rocks, right? Into the backsides of these waves, into the backsides of these waves. I think it could begin to work.
I'm sorry, I missed the name of the blue that you used in the top.
I just
corner.
used, that was just ultramarine blue, and then I just touched it with a bit of phthalo green.
Oh,
Not even
thank you,
sure why I did that, but
because it
I
looks
just-
cool.
yeah, it's kind of nice.
Thank you.
And again, with the full knowledge that I can come back in and continue to adjust all these, right? Again, this glaze layer will dry with this new medium that I've been playing with pretty quickly. I'm kind of liking, what do you guys think? Like, are there areas that are super bothersome as I'm just laying in mostly just my warms? Anything you're really noticing that's glaringly out of place?
Mm-mm.
All right, so I'm going to take a quick 2-3 minute break, and I need water. So I will be right back. I'm not even going to push stop record. You guys just hang out, and I'll be right back.
I wasn't here for the first few minutes of class. Did Michael mention at all? Are we continuing with Thursdays?
He didn't mention that yet. We should ask.
Yeah, I just want to know. All right.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Yeah.
I think so too.
So we just finished daylight savings over here. So I usually get up at 3 in the morning to come to the class.
Oh,
And
no.
I know, and my alarm was going off at 2:45 in the morning. And I was like, great, I'm gonna get up and I'm gonna be all refreshed, have a nice coffee. And then I realized we are now 1 hour behind. And I was like, oh no. So I'm like scrambling to get up and but we made it, everybody.
Wow.
Well, hello, welcome.
Oh, thank you.
They should, we're constantly fighting in this country to get rid of daylight savings. I
Yeah.
wish we could.
Yeah, me too.
It's a bit the same here. We have, I think, 3 states. So we have like 7 of them. 3 of the states do daylight savings, and then the rest don't. But there's one state in particular that just will not budge, flat out refuses, and it's on the same time, like, timeline, I guess. And I have grown to really love daylight savings as an Australian. We sort of are sun worshippers a little bit. Like, we love to be outside, we love summer, and daylight savings for us means like the sun comes up at 5 in the morning and stays out until 10 p.m. And for me, I just feel like Superman getting my powers from the sun. So I'm totally happy to have that. And then when it goes back, it is such an adjustment. And now my dogs are bothering me at 5 in the morning to walk them, and 4 p.m. for dinner. And
Yeah.
just wind your watch back, lady. It's not that hard. The dogs are the ladies.
Right.
Not everyone else.
Their internal clock doesn't understand that, though.
That's true.
Yeah, that's the argument that a lot of people here use, I guess, or whatever, to get rid of daylight savings, is that animals get affected by it, particularly like cows, because we have a really big sort of meat farming culture here. So it's usually like rural communities that will be the ones not wanting daylight savings, because they're like, my cows are freaking out and it takes so long to adjust. And how interesting is that,
Yeah.
that even
Yeah.
farm animals figure it out.
I think it's all about the natural circadian rhythm of it.
Very much. Yeah.
And birds sing, that awakens plants, that, the vibration of the birds' voices, it's all connected.
All right. Thank you for letting me get some water. I got some lemon water, so hopefully I can keep talking. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to bring some of those reds kind of into the between colors. And I think, for better or worse, I would like to start introducing some of those cools so that you can read a little better, and I can read a little better about what's going on. Right now, it's kind of an interesting bunch of color, and the grays in here and stuff are reading as, not how I see them or how I hope to see them once the painting is a little further along. So I'm gonna kind of wipe away the top here. And I'm going to bring in some reds, and I'm going to grab a littler brush, something I can control a little more. And I'm going to be a little more thoughtful. So I'm taking my warm red medium here, which is transparent. All the colors I'm using are transparent at this stage. Again, I'm gonna add a little yellow to that, maybe even a touch of Indian yellow to really make it warmer. And it's going to be more yellow orange here where the sun is, kind of in this area. And then as I get further away from the sun, I'm going to be getting just a little bit cooler, meaning less orange, more reddish. So I'm just mixing up a little pile, add a little medium to that. And I'm going to be using, again, a brush that I can control because I'm not just blasting in big, huge areas. So let's see, let's test it. I don't know if you guys can see that, it's such a big painting. So it's still very transparent. You guys see that warmth that I'm bringing in there, hopefully? Not quite yellow, not quite orange, a little bit reddish. Hold the brush like a wand, sir. Can't just tell your students to do it and not do it yourself. Does all of a sudden the sun feel like it's coming from here a little more?
Yes.
Yeah.
So this painting is really, I mean, my whole thought process is, how is the light traveling through this? And I've got to think beyond a two-dimensional space. I have to think about it in 3 dimensions. I have to be able to travel in mentally, in between, behind, and really think about how is that light traveling? It's sneaking in here. It's getting into some of these branches, especially the areas where there's a little bit of sky holes. So you get some of that warmth coming through there. With the big focus being, again, right kind of in here at this moment. Let's take a little bit of that warmth and bring it into these rocks that are catching the misty, warm light a little bit stronger. Isn't it? I don't know. It just makes me kind of, again, I think about that Polaroid picture, right? That's just slowly developing. The edges of these rocks are catching a little bit.
Are you looking at a photo reference or references at all at this point?
But it's black and white.
Yeah. Thank you.
So that's the fun for me, is I'm making it up. It would be nice to have, but the truth is that the day was more black and white. You know, this is based on Oregon coast, but I
Yeah.
just like a lot of you guys, I like warmth, right? So even though it's a gray, hazy day, I can push that. I could totally make this, and I, you know, maybe at the end of today, I'll be like, I should have just left it black and white. That would have been a lot better. But I just, you know, I'm always kind of half willing to take my painting a little too far. I always laugh when I share like process images on Facebook or, you know, any of the social media, and people are like, I liked it before you know, did this. I liked it before, but it's all about learning for me. It's all about just that experimentation and just seeing, you know, how would I know if this works or not if I don't try it?
Mm.
And yes, it sucks when you know, have a painting that was obviously better early on. But I plan to paint, you know, at least a couple more paintings in my lifetime. So I'm just constantly gathering information. You know, you've heard me say it too many times already, but every painting is about the next painting. Every painting is an information gathering process. of both what works and what doesn't. And if you're scared of that, I get it because it's scary, but at the same time, you're just not growing. The artists that are the bravest learn the fastest. Again, not just what to do, but what not to do. And you guys may be just going, well, I've learned a lot about what not to do today. Thank you, Michael. I'm going to start adding a little more red just because I want to see. So this is I'm just going to add a little red to that orangey kind of yellowy color. And I'm just curious what happens if I bring reds into these trees. I still probably want to let some of that orange edge show through, or there's a little more transparency. The boughs, the branches, the pine needles are letting a little more light through towards the edge, but where it gets a little bit thicker, starts to get a little redder. I kind of like, some artists will come through and really be fine. Like I could take a small brush and really be finding, but I kind of like the transparency as it overlaps kind of in a slightly messy way a little bit. And that's just a preference thing. I'm not following that black and white painting perfectly.
It creates such a nice illusion of depth, I think.
Good.
I
I hope. Let's even make this red a little more reddish. And then I can come in even with some cooler reds, meaning like a quinacridone or a and again, now I start to think about where's that light that's sneaking through, maybe catching on some of these rocks. Also, I can think about the direction of that light, and I can kind of paint it in a slightly directional. Again, my sun is kind of right in here. Isn't that interesting? Just adding that little bit of a transition between the yellows, the oranges, and now into the reds. So for Linda Morgan O'Connor and Gail and a couple of you guys that are, experimenting more with glazing, using the wipe away method, or, maybe I know Cheryl's not here, but Cheryl with her acrylics, and Diane Lewis, as you're experimenting more with acrylics and ideas of glazing. I hope that you guys can see that even if I was using acrylics to do this, I can do a lot of the same techniques. In fact, if this wasn't class, I may be doing a lot of this with acrylics just because I want to learn more about glazing with acrylics.
the color you're adding now is really giving it life, like energy.
Yeah, thank you. I agree. And you just heard me make whatever weird sound effect I just made, but that's me being pleasantly surprised.
Surprise
You're
you.
funny.
So it goes back to our lesson even from last class about gradients. I guess we talked about gradients in this class quite a bit as well, right? So I want my light to shadow gradient, but I also want my temperature gradient, you know, from the yellows to the oranges to the reds. Eventually, I know I'm going to be getting into blues and greens, right? And I could just figure out, you know, how big of a warm area or how small of a warm area and how it's affecting these different things. And there's not really a right or wrong as long as it feels like it could be natural, right? I could do this whole painting in warms and it would probably still feel okay, but I think that it'll read, that's Indian yellow all of a sudden dominating. It's such a crazy strong color.
So do you usually go warm to cool?
Great question. I'm like literally like, I mean, because the light is the storyteller in this, it kind of makes sense to me to do it this way because this is really determining the rest of it. Yeah, that's a really good question.
I think when you're glazing like this over a underpainting, you have better control of the heat of the warm colors when you do the warm colors first. If you do it the other way, you have a better chance of contamination and you can't bring that brilliance out, the heat of the warm colors if you do the cold first.
Yeah, I would agree with that. That right now, I mean, I could literally take my Gamsol and get back to almost square one.
Right.
So let's just say that I did the cools first. For one, I would be leaning in towards purples and greens because wherever I have blue and it touches yellow is going to turn to green and it might not be where I want. And that, you know, the thing about this medium, again, is it dries really quick. Like, again, I think I could come back in and glaze over a lot of this in about 3 hours, which with normal oils is not the case. So, you know, as somebody who's really experimenting with and trying glazing in oils, glazing in acrylics, and again, this just goes to my personal taste. Like my favorite artist growing up was Maxfield Parrish, who was just a master of glazing. So I kind of like in the back of my head, sometimes I'm like, if Maxfield Parrish lived today, would he be an acrylic painter? Right? Maybe. Would he be using these fast drying mediums, which he was still using, making his own back then? But luckily we don't have to use all the crazy chemicals that artists in the past were using. I keep wanting this light, which is catching this top of this hillside here. Also, it's going to be catching this one off in the distance. So it keeps getting cool, right? So I'm thinking, you know, how warm can I get it? Maybe let's go to a quinacridone red. Just sneak up on it and get a little bit. Let's see what happens.
I don't know if you've noticed, Michael, but the more glaze you add up there, the more golden the glaze on the waves becomes. It's like the glaze on the waves is popping because of the color you're adding in the background.
Oh, good. And I'm also noticing how much bluer this blue's feeling.
Yep.
Yeah.
Like before, I was like, oh, why'd you even bother putting that there? It's just a hint. But now as we get more warm colors, it makes the cools even cooler.
I think no matter how many times you say it, the only way my brain is going to get it is just keep doing it.
It is really, yeah. I mean, it is just kind of keep building.
That's what I love about glazing. You can just sneak up on it. It becomes instinctual almost.
And you see that I just had to wipe away. That quinacridone was too strong. Felt like putting lipstick all of a sudden into the distance here. So it was too red, too strong. I still want some of that effect. But that's the great thing about glazing as well, is I get a little time to kind of play, to test. So now I'm coming back in with a slightly golder version. And I've really got to think of like how much of this mist in front of this hill do I want to be catching the light. Now it's almost too much yellow. So back and forth we go, right? We're just, you know, testing things. I wish it was more of a science. I wish I could just teach you a formula that would work. But every painting, every lighting situation, every colors, every mood, every poem that you're trying to tell, hopefully is different. Yeah, I may have to come back in and leave this yellow, but then glaze in with a cooler red after it's kind of set in a little bit. So I want that warmth, but I don't think I want it that vibrant. Now that feels a little better, right?
Yeah.
Like it's got a soft light kind of enveloping it here. Let's take a little more yellow. And again, just testing. So where that light is hitting the top of this water, there's oftentimes this real subtle but beautiful misty transition. I'm just going to come across it in a little bit crazy way there.
Is that the transparent earth yellow?
Yeah, mixed with a touch of Indian yellow, which is so electric feeling on here. Let's bring a little bit of that into this mist here as well. And just see, so I'm going to take it right into the white of that water. Maybe right into that cave. Little bits of highlights here. Little bits of highlights here. That light is also sneaking through between these two rocks, right? So I got to think of that. It's not just hitting the cave entrance, the tunnel or whatever that is. It's kind of coming across. It's rolling across the top of these hills. So it's beginning to show up in the water here, I hope, I think. So much to think about, isn't there, when you're thinking about this big, vast scene in 3 dimensions? Ooh, kind of liking it. I'll lighten these warms a little. I'll come back in and wipe them away a little bit so they're not so punchy. But I'm really starting to think about how's that light coming across. You know, this is casting a shadow, so this stays a little cooler, right?
Yeah.
And those automatically look bluer.
Sorry, Gail, I didn't hear
The
you.
cool areas are automatically looking bluer in the water.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I know. All of a sudden, these waves don't feel so out of place
No.
anymore.
They feel blue. Mhm.
Well, that really helped.
How is the light traveling through the scene? Maybe I could just pretend that this was my intention for this class all along. Today is all about how does light travel through a scene? Ooh, if that's the case, then this needs to be the case, right? Let's do the same. Let's add a little bit back here. This is scary. So the light is behind this hill. So then it's probably hitting behind, you know, again, this far bank, right?
Mhm.
Ah, why would would you do that? So scary.
It's a wow.
Got a little bit urine-y back there, so wipe that down a little bit. You're in for a good time when you look at this painting. I mean, I always joke that Indian yellow is the color of sunshine. This may be the best example I've ever done where I'm like, yeah, it literally is. Does it not feel like the sun is slowly
Yeah, that's really
sneaking
cool.
into this painting?
You can almost see the little particles floating in the sunlight.
I know. This is beautiful, Mike.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, let's see what happens if this is the case and these are the temperatures. You know, again, I can come back in and I can cool them down just a little bit. Maybe I should. But I also kind of want to keep testing. Can I get away with this much warmth? I wasn't expecting to go here, but I'm getting some interesting effects. So what happens if I take that and bring it onto the edges of these waves where they're really somewhat transparent, catching that light? Got to think of, you know, where's the light? Is it getting through here? I don't think so. I think these are kind of more in the shadow. Maybe it catches the top of this one. Maybe it catches the top here. Maybe just a bit of the splatter there. Maybe just a little bit, but I kind of feel like this is in the shadow of this wave, right? I'm really thinking about how's that light traveling across. A little bit there, and of course it's coming over here. Sorry, looking at the back of my head there. I should have some inspirational message shaved into the back of my head for you guys. Remember to squint, something like that. That's kind of almost magical right there, like that transparency. It looks like the mist. Welcome to the optimistic voice in my head when things are actually working out. Isn't that cool?
Yeah.
Yes, it's cool.
Beautiful. It looks very nice.
All right, I want to bring some reds down into those waves now, just very subtly. I'm going to mix my red medium and my quinacridone, so it's not so warm, but I want to create a transition color. So as it comes into the shadows and into the denser parts that are not catching the light, I want just a little bit. So I'm not going to make a big, thick pink wave here. I'm just going to create a little bit of a transitional barrier almost, right? Because I know that if I come in with blues and greens and I have yellow, they're just going to really turn green. But if I have red, I can get this when I transition into my blues, then I can get a little bit of a purple transition, right? So I'm really thinking about all that stuff, about transitions of color. So for some of you guys, and you know, don't think I'm picking on you, but I'm thinking of you, Brett, a little bit, and Kim, thinking about you guys who are painting very vibrant, strong colors in your skies. You know, almost feels like you're painting kind of directly from the tube sometimes. I know you're mixing your colors, but sometimes just thinking about what's that transition between that blue and that yellow in my sky, or that blue and the red in my sky. Well, open that up that little bit more and make it so your painting's not quite as jumpy. Again, depending on what you're after what you're, what feeling you're trying to capture. And I got to remember this paint is drying quick, so I shouldn't probably be dabbing all over the place. I'm going to come back in, grab a clean paper towel, and I'm going to make those reds, which really kind of ruined the effect, didn't it? These waves were so nice just a second ago. And that red is just so strong, but I already know that. I knew that would happen. So now what I'm doing is I'm taking that red, I'm not going all the way up into the yellows, but I am bringing that red down into the shadows, and I'm wiping away.
Mm.
And you see that transition all of a sudden start to appear. Isn't it funny that these grays are beginning to look bluer?
Yeah.
And that's because color is
Well,
all about what's the color next to it. Right? If you've been in my classes before where we did the Zorn palette where you don't even get blue, you just get black as your blue. And it's amazing how literally when you show that painting to people, they will swear up and down that you used blue in your painting, but the eye just makes it up. And it's just about those transitions. All colors are relative. Now I'm seeing, I really like this little transition here where it's not as strong a light. So now I can begin to think, okay, like I said, if we're facing this painting, this is the front side of our waves, right? And we've got a top and we've got a back side, which is catching the light, right? So now I've painted mostly the back side, the light coming through these waves. So now I do have top light into these waves. And I can decide, is it a little warmer? Is it reflecting some of the reds from the sky, or is it reflecting the blues from the sky? I'm going to go and just experiment because you know what? I haven't ruined this painting fully yet. Why not? I'm going to see what happens if that's going to be way too strong, but I'm going to make it more subtle. How many of you guys are literally every couple minutes going, oh, Orwick, now you've done it?
Nope.
You guys have faith?
We have faith.
Yeah, very much.
All right. I wish I had your faith.
I have faith, but being an acrylic painter, the way my heart rate goes up when you put bits of color everywhere on a painting, and I'm like, speed run time, go, go, go.
Yeah. And again, this medium does speed up the drying time exponentially. And maybe I should be attacking one wave at a time. Maybe that's smarter. Ah,
I feel like it's a good idea though, what you're doing, so that you get, that harmony in it. Because I find that with acrylic, sometimes I just have to quickly like render something and then try and do that like 20 times. It makes it really, really hard. And, you can not get the colors right then, and you can sort of get these like mismatched areas of a painting. So
mhm.
you could do that a bit more with acrylic, just sort of bounce around.
I think so, yeah. And again, that's just really what I'm experimenting with. So I don't know if you can see, I just put a bunch of little red dabs there. I'm just going to see what happens if I create that transition between where that strong light is and where I know I'll be bringing in some cooler bluey grays or whatever colors I bring into those rocks. And I feel like this looks like a transparent wash of mist all of a sudden. I feel like I'm gambling constantly here, and I'm pushing like, oh, I won again. Let's go again. Let's go again. And like part of me is just like, you should slow down. Maybe you should let this sit and then come back in. But the other part of me is like, let it ride. Let's keep going. So now I'm bringing red into those waves or the water, and I'm putting it onto the edges where the dark little wavelets are, right against the light where the yellow is. Think about, like, do I want that edge of red coming all the way down? I think maybe I do. I think maybe it'll make a nice transition down. Again, I'm kind of pushing, well, kind of this whole painting I have been, but really kind of pushing where I feel safe. Like, again, if I wasn't trying to impress all my friends here in class, maybe I would be slowing this down a little bit. But in for a penny, in for a pound, and we're all going to learn from whatever happens here, good, bad, or the ugly. So yeah, all of a sudden this area is looking so much bluer.
Mhm.
As soon as I get this wiped out, we're going to do a little experiment with the lights. This is one of my favorite things, you know, as we move into a world surrounded with AI art and prints and reproductions. I want to give my collectors a reason to buy my originals. And a lot of it, especially when you're working with transparent layers, is that the painting completely changes based on the type of light. You know, morning light, like if you put it in a house on a wall, if it's getting morning light, if it's getting direct light, if it's getting evening light, if it's getting midday light. The painting, when you paint with translucent layers, really, really changes things. I'm also noticing as I put these reds down, the yellow's feeling less noxious. So I'm almost wondering, this band that just is bothering me back here that's so red, so yellow, I'm wondering what would happen if I hint at some red back there. Will it get a little less, toxic feeling? Did that calm it down? I can't quite tell if it did. But I feel like when I come back in and glaze a little more.
It did.
Feeling like that red was a little strong, so I'm still just kind of wiping it away. All right, let's do a test. So I'm going to do some lighting tests and just see what happens here. So without a strong light, it kind of grays down a little bit, kind of cools down. I'm going to see what happens if I literally turn off the lights here in the studio. Oh, I got one more big light over here. Hang on.
Oh.
Isn't that interesting how all of a sudden it just kind of becomes earthy and
Yeah. It's amazing.
Looks beautiful.
That's beautiful just the way it is.
Mhm.
And that-
yeah, thanks. I mean, I think it'd be, yeah, nice, but I think I may, because we do want to look at your guys' work here. So you guys can kind of decide how long you want this class to be. If you want me to keep playing and experimenting, or you guys kind of get the idea. Because basically, I think I would be safer if I kind of let this dry and then bring in the cools kind of so they're not muddying up each other a little bit. Because then I can go back in and do all the things that I'm doing now where I wipe
Okay.
back and forth.
Yeah.
that sounds
Yeah,
smart.
So maybe
to
Mm.
let dry.
maybe I'll set it aside until tomorrow for our Thursday get together.
Yeah.
And I don't want to bore you guys. That was a pretty long demo, but we covered a lot of space, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Nothing boring about it.
yeah.
Good.
Not boring.
Not boring.
Could you turn off the light again, Michael?
Such a difference.
Michael, when you add the blues to the water, will you try to preserve the reds that you put in, or will you blend the blues kind of over the top of the red?
Yeah, it'll create that transition because I don't want the blues to bump all the way against the yellows.
Mhm.
So it'll kind of touch the reds where it'll turn to a purple.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, so I get this transition.
Tune in tomorrow.
Tune in
Mhm.
tomorrow. Okay, gang. Well, this was a fun experiment. And I'm glad we were all here holding hands together because I would have been very scared. And,
I can breathe now.
I can breathe. Yeah, exactly. So let's go ahead and take a 10-minute break. Be back at 11:25 Pacific Standard Time. And I can't wait to see what you guys have been sharing and